Stephen Miller just had a full-on meltdown on live TV. And yes, we're going to show it to you. It's unhinged, it's humiliating, and it's everything you'd expect from Trump's angriest little hype man. He tried defending Trump's chaos with falling apart in front of millions. But before we get to that disaster, we need to talk about what pushed him over the edge. And it starts right here.
Well, I regard it very much within the prism of what we've been dealing with over the last month, which is an intense assault on judicial independence. They have been disobeying federal court orders systematically. They have incurred criminal contempt findings in the courtroom of Judge Boasberg, a conservative Republican judge. They have been demanding the impeachment of judges who rule against the lawlessness of the Trump administration. There are now more than 90 preliminary injunctions and temporary restraining orders against the chaos that's been unleashed on the country by the Trump administration. And now they're arresting judges. And the first felony criminal charge brought against Judge Hannah Dugan in Wisconsin is interfering with a legal proceeding, which is essentially what they've been doing all along. What Judge Boasberg is about to hold them in criminal contempt for, and has found that there is probable cause for criminal contempt, is that they deliberately ignored and defied his order not to take off in those airplanes headed for El Salvador and not turning the airplanes around. So on the logic of this arrest of Judge Dugan, all of the people in the Trump administration who participated in defying that order by Judge Boasberg themselves could be arrested for interfering with a legal proceeding and perhaps other criminal charges like kidnapping, as you were suggesting before.
Donald Trump just turned the US legal system into his personal punching bag again. And Congressman Jamie Raskin, he is not exactly in the mood to play nice. What we're watching here is basically the Orange House edition of How to Lose a Democracy in 10 Days. Judges getting ignored, court orders treated like junk mail, and now, yes, an actual felony charge slapped on a Wisconsin judge just for doing her job. Because apparently, if you're not actively breaking the law for Trump, you're now guilty of breaking it against him. Think about it. Trump's goons defy a federal judge, a conservative, mind you, who told them to stop deportation flights. And their reaction? Arrest the judge for interfering with their nonsense. That's like robbing a bank and suing the security guard for getting in your way. And by that Trumpy logic, everyone in his administration should be facing arrest for interfering with a legal proceeding. Or as Raskin pointed out, maybe even kidnapping. But of course, Trump does not care. He's not exactly famous for reading legal briefs, or reading at all. If there's one thing he loves, besides gold toilets and Diet Coke, it's waging war on anyone who dares check his power. And right now, he's got the judiciary in his sights, because nothing sends Donald into a caps lock meltdown like a judge with a gavel reminding him he's not above the law. No matter how many fake businesses he's bankrupted, he's calling them radical. He's painting them as far left, even when they were literally his own appointees. Stephen Miller tried to defend it all on live TV, and spoiler alert, it was a catastrophic cringe fest. But before we drag that mess into the spotlight, there's another thing getting under Miller's skin right now. And no, it's not about politics, it's his wife.
Dems taunt Stephen Miller over wife leaving with Musk. Democrats have little to be giddy about these days, but they took pleasure in taunting White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller as Elon Musk made his White House exit with Miller's wife at his side. The official X account of the Democrats had a spicy post on Friday where they simply tagged Stephen Miller's handle and included an image of an empty chair in a corner of what looked like a hotel room. Now, this post meant to imply that Stephen Miller maybe liked to observe certain activities between a certain someone, Elon Musk, and a certain other someone, his wife, but that's neither here nor there.
Stephen Miller just took an L, and this time it wasn't over immigration policy. Democrats are having a rare moment of joy, gleefully roasting Miller after Elon Musk was spotted leaving the White House with Miller's wife. Yes, really. The Dems' official account even posted a lonely little chair photo and tagged Miller directly, subtle as a flying anvil. And while the internet ran wild with creative theories about what that chair might symbolize, the real kicker, right after this clip we get to the final, the crazy meltdown we we all waited for.
The Post retweeted the Daily Beast's report that Miller's wife, Katie, a Doge advisor and spokesperson, was also on her way out of the Trump administration to work for the tech billionaire full-time. But Musk also got pushback from Miller's husband as he decided to criticize the president's big beautiful bill as a disappointment on his way out the door. Musk told CBS News in an interview this week that the massive legislation undermines the work of Doge and balloons the deficit. Miller fired back in a lengthy X post where he argued the bill could not discretionarily cut discretionary spending due to Senate rules. He also insisted the Congressional Budget Office was wrong that it increases the deficit, dismissing the analysis as an accounting gimmick.
Stephen Miller, bless his shriveled heart, is having a rough week. His wife just traded in MAGA for Musk. She's off to join Doge World full time. And now Steven is getting dragged into a budget brawl with Elon on live TV. Talk about a tech billionaire stealing your job and preferably your spouse. That's gotta sting. So now Musk is torching Trump's big beautiful bill, calling it a bloated mess that wrecks the economy. And how does Miller respond? By doing what he does best, writing a 15-paragraph rage post that reads like someone lost an argument with a calculator. He claims the Senate rules tie Trump's hands. He swears the Congressional Budget Office got it all wrong. He calls the whole thing an accounting gimmick, which is rich, coming from a guy whose entire career is built on smoke, mirrors, and white nationalist PowerPoints. So yes, Miller's taking it from all sides, politically, professionally, and maybe emotionally. We're not saying anything more than that. We're definitely not making jokes about that chair again, but it's clear he is boiling over. And when he finally popped up on CNN, and oh boy, that meltdown was pure humiliation for himself. And yes, we've got the clip.
We saw whenever a judge rules against this administration, you say they're going rogue. Do you think a judge should just rubber stamp what your White House does? If not, what checks and balances do you think should be in place for this White House?
It is not the job of a district court judge to perform an individual green light or red light on every single policy that the president takes as the head of the executive branch. Just think about the premise baked into your question, respectfully, Pam. You're saying that when the American people elect a president of the United States of America,
I'm not saying
well, it's the implication, who is the sole head of the executive branch. Well, let me finish. I will answer the question happily. But look, when you have these kinds of lazy assumptions built into questions, it makes it hard to have a constructive dialogue.
What is a lazy assumption? I said you all had to win.
You said is it my expectation?
Stephen Miller tried to defend Trump's legal chaos on CNN and immediately tripped over his own rage and 5 different versions of the word "the." What started as a simple question about checks and balances turned into a full-on tantrum. Miller kept interrupting, deflecting, and accusing the reporter of lazy assumptions, all while melting down in real time like a bootleg Bond villain who forgot his talking points. He was so flustered he couldn't even finish a sentence without glitching like a dial-up modem in 2003. And this wasn't just a bad interview, it was a total collapse. And trust me, this meltdown is far from over.
I'm speaking
you said, is it my expectation? It's not just you, it's the whole media. In other words, when you hear a sentence like...
It is a completely fair question. You say judges who rule against the White House,
and I will gladly answer it. When you say, do we think district court judges should rubber stamp each action? There is a premise that is built into that is absurd. The president is the sole head of the executive branch. He's the only officer in the entire government that's elected by the entire American people. Democracy cannot function. In fact, democracy does not exist at all if each action the president takes, foreign policy, diplomatic, military, national security, has to be individually approved by 700 district court judges. That's democracy. So if there's 15 communist crazy judges on the court, that each of them as a team working together can block and freeze each and every executive action.
Stephen Miller just went full democracy is dead mode, because apparently asking questions equals communism now. In this unhinged rant, he argued that if judges are allowed to challenge the president's actions, then democracy literally cannot exist. Bold take from a guy who thinks checks and balances are a personal insult. He painted a picture of 15 crazy communist judges working together like some kind of Avengers squad, but for justice. The meltdown kept spiraling as he clung to this bizarre fantasy where Trump should rule unchecked. And the best part, this unfiltered chaos, it's not over.
Joe Biden was allowed by that same court system.
Some of them are Trump judges, though. Are they? Why did Trump put these crazy communist judges, as you call them, on the bench?
You heard President Trump himself say that the Federalist Society and Leonard Leo has created a broken system for judicial vetting. And God knows this time around, we are not going to be using... So does that mean he doesn't support picking Amy Coney Barrett for the Supreme Court? What it means is simply this and nothing more. We're not going to be using the Federal Society to make judicial nominations at all going forward. But let me tell you about these rogue judges. This is the most litigated issue over the last 10 years. Over the last 10 years, whether or not to deport the foreigners who invaded our country illegally. That is the most litigated issue. You want a democracy in this country? When Americans vote, when they cry out and they beg for a president to come and save them from this invasion, and some district court judge in San Francisco or Manhattan or Los Angeles tries to shut it down and shield these foreigners from deportation, while the courts did nothing to stop Joe Biden and his administration and his officers, the Mayorkas, from overseeing this invasion?
So let me get this straight. When Trump gets blocked by a judge, it's a communist conspiracy. But when Biden uses the exact same courts, it's a national betrayal. Stephen Miller's logic here has more plot holes than a QAnon message board. Every time something goes wrong for Trump, it's the deep state. If a judge blocks him, they're corrupt. If a judge sides with him, well, it's still the deep state, but oops, they got fooled. Didn't Trump promise to drain the swamp? At this point, he's just splashing around in it, with Stephen Miller holding the hose. And honestly, I take immense joy in watching Miller squirm, because he's been behind some of the cruelest, most illegal policies this country's seen. But don't worry, we're not done, because Jen Psaki just broke it all down, and she torched Trump's deportation plan right here.
Free Dylan, free Dylan, free Dylan, free Dylan, free Dylan, free Dylan, free Dylan.
That was the scene at the Tweed Courthouse in Lower Manhattan tonight, as the United Federation of Teachers joined state and local officials in protesting for the release of this Bronx high schooler named Dylan. Dylan is an asylum-seeking migrant from Venezuela. He goes to a school called Ellis Prep in the Bronx and works as a delivery driver to help support his family. And last week, he became the first New York City public school student to be arrested by ICE since Trump's second term began.
This is what Trump's America looks like. ICE agents dragging a high school kid out of class while he's trying to keep his family afloat. Dylan is a teenager. He's working, he's studying, he's surviving, and now he's being treated like a criminal while the MAGA machine pats itself on the back for law and order. Teachers are protesting, elected officials are outraged, but Trump's immigration goons, they're just getting started. This is Stephen Miller's dream scenario. Cruelty as policy, fear as campaign fuel. And don't think this nightmare ends here, because the MAGA immigration circus isn't over. More is coming.
All week we've seen protest after protest for his release. And last night, 23 people were arrested at a protest marking 1 week since Dylan's arrest. You can see the footage there. The people of New York are clearly outraged, and they're not even the only ones. I mean, this is Kennett, Missouri. It may be about as different from New York City as a place can be. While we don't have election results from the city itself, it is the largest city in Dunklin County, which voted for Trump last year by more than a 4-to-1 margin. So you would think if anywhere in the country would support Trump's immigration policies, it would be a place like Kennett, Missouri, right? But when this woman, a longtime resident of Kennett, a woman who goes by Carol, a waitress at the local diner, a mother to 3 kids, an active member of the local church, when Carol got arrested by ICE earlier this week, the residents were shocked. One resident telling the New York Times, quote, "I voted for Donald Trump, and so did practically everyone here, but no one voted to deport moms. We were all under the impression we were just getting rid of the gangs, the people who came here in droves." This is Carol. The diner that Carol worked at, John's Waffle and Pancake House, is normally closed on Tuesdays, but last Tuesday they stayed open. They called it Carol Day. The staff and their families wore shirts that read, "Bring Carol home." You can see them right there in the photos.
Even in deep red Missouri, Trump's immigration crackdown is starting to hit home. Literally. Carol wasn't a bad hombre. She was a church-going mom who served waffles and coffee. And now she's in ICE custody? Even Trump's own supporters are realizing they bought into a fantasy, one where only gang members got deported. But now, it's moms, students, neighbors, people who raised kids and ran diners. The MAGA machine doesn't care who it swallows, just that it keeps grinding. And if you think this story is already heartbreaking, just wait. Listen to how much money they collect.
All of the proceeds from every single meal that day went to a fundraiser for Carol. They filled every seat and raised nearly $8,000 that way. But get this, There were more people who wanted to help than the diner even had seats. So they put out a donation box for people who couldn't get a seat in the diner, and they raised nearly another $12,000 that way. On every table between the jelly packets and the ketchup was a petition to bring Carol home. Hundreds of locals have signed it. Look, the Trump administration is reportedly aiming to deport 1 million people this year.
Carol's community didn't just make noise, they made a statement. Every booth at that diner was packed, not for pancakes, but for purpose. They raised nearly $8,000 through meals, and when they ran out of seats, they didn't run out of compassion. Locals dropped another $12,000 in a simple donation box. On every table, between the ketchup bottles and jelly packets, was a petition to bring Carol home, and hundreds of people signed it. This is what real America looks like. People standing up when cruelty comes knocking on their neighbor's door. But Trump's administration, they don't care. They're not backing down. In fact, they're ramping up, reportedly aiming to deport 1 million people this year. Let that number sink in, 1 million. So if you're wondering who's next, the answer is anyone. Students, moms, waitresses, your neighbor. And if you're tired of the lies, the cruelty, and the absolute chaos this administration continues to unleash, then hit that subscribe button, because we're not done, not even close. Our next video dives straight into another unbelievable move from Trump or his administration. And trust me, you are going to want to see it.